If you wanted to understand the absolute core of, our society's unwritten rules today, you probably wouldn't look at our laws or our political speeches.
Right. Definitely not.
You'd look at a beginner's English lesson on how to use the public library.
Yeah, which sounds crazy, but it's true.
It really is. Welcome to the deep dive. I'm so glad you're here with us today. Our mission is to unpack this seemingly simple source you brought to our attention.
Yeah, I'm excited to get into this one.
So it's a transcript from an English language learning video. It's titled Learn English at the Library, and it's episode 11 from a channel called LearnCast English.
Exactly. And on the surface, this document is marketed as just basic listening and speaking practice for adults, right?
Yeah, just everyday stuff.
But if you peel back that layer of beginner vocabulary, we actually find a highly detailed, surprisingly complex blueprint of modern civic life.
Oh, wow. A blueprint.
Yeah. It reveals the exact mechanisms of, well, how we expect newcomers to integrate into our public spaces, our digital infrastructure, and even our social contracts.
That is so interesting. So we're going to explore that entire blueprint today. We'll look at the psychology behind the highly specific books learners are taught to ask for and, how the library functions as this massive community operating system.
Mm-hmm.
But to truly understand the library lesson, we first have to understand the environment the learner was subjected to immediately prior. Because the curriculum does something conceptually fascinating here.
It really does. The sequencing is, well, it's highly intentional.
Right. Before the transcript even lets the learner walk through the library doors, it forces them to recap episode 10, which is entirely about surviving the airport.
Yeah. You cannot fully appreciate the psychological arrival into a community without first experiencing the stress of the physical transit.
Okay, let's unpack this sequence because the contrast is just incredibly deliberate. The airport section is this barrage of high-stakes transactional language.
Absolute survival mode.
Exactly, survival mode. The learner practices asking for check-in locations and printing boarding passes. They rehearse the exact phrases needed to survive the security check.
Like answering questions about prohibited liquids.
Yes, and understanding instructions to take off their shoes. They practice asking flight attendants for water or headphones, navigating the sheer chaos of baggage claim, and immediately hailing a taxi to a hotel.
It's intense. Every single phrase is tied to an immediate physical necessity.
It's all about just getting through it.
Right, and think about the underlying psychology of those specific interactions. In an airport, your individual identity is, well, it's temporarily erased.
So totally, you're just a number.
Exactly. You are categorized solely as a passenger, which is basically a unit moving through a highly regulated, secure system.
You're just cargo that talks, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. And the language taught in that episode reflects a strict hierarchy of compliance. You are responding to authority figures, security agents, customs officers, airline staff.
You don't have agency in an airport.
No, you have obedience. The vocabulary provides the bare minimum required to cross a physical border without, setting off alarms or triggering an interrogation.
Which makes the pivot to episode 11 so jarring. You go straight from this high-stress survival mode where, saying the wrong thing about a bottle of shampoo might mean missing a flight, directly into what feels like a thriving mode.
Right.
You move from the heavily guarded customs desk straight to the community circulation desk.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out why a curriculum would sequence these two very different spaces back to back.
It's a great question.
Is the library intended to be the ultimate test of actually settling down into a new culture?
Well, it maps the true psychological journey of the newcomer. The airport is the physical crossing of a border, but the library represents crossing an intellectual and social border.
Oh, I like that. Physical versus intellectual.
Yeah, because in the transit space of an airport, you are transient by definition. But once you walk into a local library, you are engaging with permanence. You are transitioning from traveler to local.
That makes a lot of sense.
The language shifts completely from compliance-like answering questions to prove you belong to inquiry, where you are proactively asking questions to claim your space in the community.
Claiming space. That is a great way to put it. You aren't just a barcode on a boarding pass anymore.
Exactly.
You're a resident with personal interests and a curious mind. And this concept of intellectual integration really shines when we look at what these learners are actually being taught to read.
Yes, the reading lists are fascinating.
Because the curriculum doesn't just teach the learner to walk up to the desk and say, where is the book?
No, the level of specificity in the requests changes the entire dynamic of the lesson.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. The lesson requires the learner to practice requests that are shockingly specific.
Almost absurdly specific.
Yes. I'm going to list a few of the exact phrases taught in the source. They have the learner say, I'm looking for books on World War II history, especially those that focus on the European front.
Think about that. That phrasing requires an understanding of distinct historical theaters of war, not just a broad topic.
And it doesn't stop there. They practice saying, do you have any novels written by contemporary African authors in English translation?
Wow.
They ask for books on the impact of climate change on coastal cities. They ask for classic English literature, specifically naming Shakespeare and Charles Dickens. They request graphic novels suitable for teenagers and books on ancient civilizations, especially Egyptians or Greeks. They practice asking for basic computer programming manuals.
It's such a wide range.
Right. They even rehearse the phrase, I heard there's a new biography about Elon Musk. Is it available in this library?
It functions as a cross-section of global literary, historical, and technological awareness.
But I have to push back on the pedagogy here.
Oh, go for it.
The video is titled Easy Listening and Speaking Practice for Beginners. Memorizing a phrase like contemporary African authors in English translation when you might still be, wrestling with basic verb conjugation.
Oh, it seems completely overwhelming, yeah.
It feels like the creators are making the lesson unnecessarily complex. Is there a psychological reason for setting the bar this high? Or is this just a poorly designed curriculum for a beginner?
What's fascinating here is, well, to understand why this is actually brilliant design, we have to look at the traditional mechanisms of adult language learning.
Okay, how so?
Historically, materials for beginners infantilize adults.
Oh, totally. Like the ball is red.
Exactly. Imagine you are a 35-year-old professional. You have complex political opinions, a deep professional background, and nuanced cultural interests.
Right.
But when you move to a new country and start learning the language, your vocabulary limits you to sounding like a toddler. You are forced to spend weeks pointing at pictures and saying, the apple is red, or the cat is on the table.
That has to be incredibly demoralizing. You feel like you've lost your entire personality because you physically cannot express your adult thoughts.
It creates a profound cognitive dissonance. In fact, the leading cause of adult learners abandoning a new language isn't the difficulty of the grammar.
Really? What is it?
It is the sheer frustration of being unable to represent their true identity.
Oh, wow. Never thought about that.
Yeah, so by embedding these highly nuanced requests into the lesson, whether it's about coastal climate change or basic computer programming, the curriculum fundamentally respects the learner's intellect.
It treats them like an adult.
Exactly. It operates on the assumption that the adult learner already possesses a rich inner life.
So the challenge isn't teaching them the concepts. The challenge is just giving them the adult vocabulary to express the identity they already have.
Precisely. And the transcript also includes phrases where the learner asks for career advice for recent college graduates.
Oh, right.
Or prep books for a university entrance exam. It assumes the learner has ambitions and cultural curiosity. You aren't just learning how to construct an English sentence, you are being given the tools to be yourself again in a new environment.
That reframes the whole lesson. It's not about making the language harder. It's about making the language worth learning.
Exactly.
If you give someone the exact phrase to ask for a graphic novel for their teenager, or, the Elon Musk biography they genuinely want to read, you are validating their existence as a complex human being.
Yeah, it's incredibly validating.
And expressing that identity quickly moves beyond just checking out physical books.
Huh.
Because as we move through the transcript, it becomes clear that the modern library being described goes way beyond a Dewey Decimal System.
Oh, for sure. The physical book almost serves as just a conversational entry point to access a much larger infrastructure.
Yes, because once they get past the initial bureaucracy of applying for a library card and asking what documents prove residency, the vocabulary shifts entirely
To what?
to digital and community services.
Hmm.
The learners practice asking about borrowing ebooks and audiobooks. They learn to ask about printing documents and using public computers.
Crucial survival skills today, really.
Absolutely. They learn to ask about finding places to charge their laptops and mobile phones. And then it gets deeply social.
Right, the community aspect.
Yeah, they ask about language exchange programs, community workshops, children's storytelling sessions, and volunteering opportunities.
The sheer variety of services listed reveals the modern library's evolution.
So what does this all mean for how we view these spaces? When I think about this list of services, it sounds less like a traditional book repository
Yeah.
and much more like a community operating system.
A community operating system. That's a great analogy.
Think about your smartphone. The operating system is the underlying framework that allows all your apps to function.
Right.
It seems to me that the library provides the physical hardware for the community. The computers, the printers, the charging ports, the climate-controlled rooms.
Yep.
But it also provides the civic software, the reading groups, the career advice, the storytelling sessions. Without this operating system, citizens simply cannot run the daily programs of their lives.
Like applying for a job or integrating their kids into a new neighborhood.
Exactly.
That analogy captures the exact mechanism of the institution. An operating system bridges the gap between complex hardware and the end user. In our society, the library bridges the gap between essential civic resources and the individual.
Yeah, it connects everything.
Consider the phrases focused on technology. Asking to use a public computer, or to print documents, or to charge a phone. For many of us, a dead phone is just an inconvenience.
Right, you just wait till you get home.
But for a newcomer navigating the digital divide, access to electricity and internet isn't a luxury. It is the absolute prerequisite for securing housing, navigating immigration portals, and communicating with family overseas.
That is so true. And the curriculum explicitly teaches them how to navigate the system if they have specific needs.
Like what?
There's a phrase where the learner asks, are there any special services for people with visual impairments, like audiobooks or large print books?
That's a great inclusion.
Yeah, and they also ask if they need an appointment to use a private study room.
Teaching a newcomer to advocate for accessibility services highlights the library's role as the great equalizer.
The great equalizer.
Yeah. In a heavily commercialized capitalist society, public spaces where you are not expected to spend money to justify your presence are, well, they're incredibly rare.
It's basically just the library at this point.
Exactly. The curriculum doesn't just teach the English words for these services, it signals to the learner that they have a fundamental right to access them, regardless of their economic or physical status. The space belongs to them just as much as anyone else.
But tapping into that powerful operating system comes with a hidden cost. The transcript doesn't shy away from the fact that to use this free community space, you have to agree to a complex, sometimes intimidating social contract.
Access is always predicated on mutual agreement to the rules of engagement.
And honestly, reading through this next section of the source material gave me a bit of secondhand stress.
Really? How so?
We move straight into the uncomfortable situations of sharing space. The source provides the exact scripts for some highly anxiety-inducing scenarios.
Oh, the conflict resolution stuff.
Yeah, they teach phrases like, I accidentally returned a book late. Is there a fine I need to pay?
Hmm.
Or, what happens if I damage book I borrowed?
That is stressful.
Right. And I lost my library card a few days ago. How can I request a replacement?
The curriculum forces the learner to confront the mechanics of failure within the system.
Think about the emotional weight of that for a second. Think about the last time you borrowed something and accidentally broke it.
It's awful.
It is mortifying to admit that to a stranger in your native language. Imagine being a newcomer, already feeling out of place, and having to approach an authority figure at a desk to admit you destroyed a piece of civic property.
That's a huge barrier.
It feels like this part of the lesson is forcing the learner to brace for a worst-case scenario. Is the goal here actually language acquisition? Or is the curriculum secretly serving as a crash course in anxiety management?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the anxiety management aspect is arguably the most vital part of the lesson.
Wait, really? More than the vocabulary?
Absolutely. Consider the psychological state of a newcomer operating within an unfamiliar bureaucratic system. The fear of making a misstep, one that might result in unexpected financial penalties, a loss of social standing, or even legal trouble, can be absolutely paralyzing.
That makes sense. Everything feels high stakes.
Right. In many cultures, damaging state or institutional property carries severe, unforgiving consequences. A newcomer might naturally assume that a damaged book means their library privileges are permanently revoked or that they will be reported to a higher authority.
You would just avoid the building altogether. You'd hide the damaged book and never go back.
Exactly. But by providing the exact script for confession like, I accidentally returned a book late, is there a fine I need to pay? The curriculum demystifies the authority of the institution.
It gives them a script for the worst-case scenario.
It signals to the learner that mistakes are expected, and more importantly, that the system has built-in manageable procedures for resolving them.
Wow.
It replaces the paralyzing fear of unknown punishment with the agency of a simple transactional fine.
It teaches them that the institution is ultimately forgiving, as long as you know how to navigate its procedures. You don't have to panic, you just follow the script.
Exactly. It's empowering.
And that procedural knowledge extends to the unwritten rules of etiquette, too. The transcript covers asking if food and drink are allowed in study areas.
Oh, the quiet zone rules?
Yes. It covers finding quiet zones where mobile phones are strictly banned, using the after-hours return box, and checking if headphones are required to watch videos on the public computers.
Those unwritten rules dictate the minutiae of public coexistence.
Mm-hmm.
Giving someone the vocabulary to ask about headphone rules or quiet zones empowers them to respect the boundaries of the community. And by respecting those boundaries, they ensure they are respected by the community in return.
It's a two-way street.
Right. You engage with the social contract. You pay your late fee, you keep your voice down in the quiet zone, you use your headphones, and in exchange, the physical and intellectual resources of the space remain completely open to you.
It transforms an intimidating, silent building full of complex rules into an accessible, logical system that anyone can master.
Beautifully said.
Which brings us to the end of the remarkable journey we've tracked through this source material today. Think about the arc we've unpacked from this one beginner English transcript.
It's a huge arc.
We started alongside the learner at the chaotic, highly regulated customs desk of an airport, taking off shoes, measuring liquids, and operating in pure survival mode just to cross a border.
A journey that begins with compliance and physical transit.
And from there, we watched a curriculum guide that same learner step by step into the heart of their new community.
Right.
We saw an ESL lesson that treats adults like adults, trusting them to ask for nuanced topics, from contemporary African literature and translation to the impact of climate change on coastal cities.
Valuing their existing identity.
Exactly. We unpacked the modern library not as a dusty archive, but as a dynamic community operating system that provides both the hardware of public computers and the software of language exchange programs.
The essential infrastructure of belonging.
And finally, we saw how mastering the language of late fees and headphone etiquette empowers a newcomer to confidently participate in a shared social contract. All of this sociology and psychology hidden in plain sight inside a vocabulary lesson.
It highlights just how much invisible cultural knowledge we utilize every single time we navigate a public space.
The next time you find yourself walking through the automatic doors of your local library, or any community center for that matter, I highly encourage you to pause.
Yeah, just take a look around.
Look at the self-checkout kiosks, the quiet zone signs, the people charging their phones while filling out applications. Try to view that space through the eyes of someone learning to decode its language for the very first time.
It's a whole different perspective.
It is an intricate, beautiful system of trust and access, and we're all participating in it together.
And, it leaves us with an intriguing historical consideration to mull over.
Well, what's that?
Imagine a historian 50 years from now, in the year 2076. If they uncovered this specific language curriculum to understand our society today, they wouldn't see the library merely as a building with books.
What would they see?
They would recognize it as our most vital democratic institution, the primary space where we taught outsiders how to belong.
Wow.
Which raises a profound question. As our physical and digital worlds continue to merge, what new institutions will we be teaching newcomers to navigate in 50 years?
That is a great question.
Will the equivalent library lesson of 2076 focus on the etiquette of a community AI hub, or the social contract of navigating a virtual reality archive?
Or maybe, just maybe, they'll still be teaching people the best way to apologize for returning a physical book 2 weeks late. Some things never change.
Yeah, probably.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.